people aren't socializing as much as they used to anymore, and they're sticking to what's comfortable to them and what they know.
As a human being, we're predisposed to addiction.
I take social media breaks. There'd be 1 or 2 months at a time where I delete all my apps, I put my phone away. I 100%, there, because there are times where I'll catch myself like, why have I been scrolling my phone for the last 2 hours?
Welcome back to part 2 of the Generation Divide, Gen Z Misunderstood. I'd like to welcome back my guest. And we had this, interesting conversation last time. And I hope to continue with that same energy. What do I mean by the psychology of relationship in Gen Z? We're going to talk about technology and how that plays a role in how you view a relationship and the psychology of it. The digital revolution, communication styles, and ghosting, how that affects or how that plays a role in a relationship. So, the use of emojis, the acronyms, the LOL. I remember one time when LOL was the thing, and someone sent me a message and it says LOL. I'm looking at it, I'm like, what's LOL? LOL? And it took me a while. And in fact, emojis, when I see it, I'm like, what does this mean? Even till today, I still have to Google some emojis to figure out what it means. So imagine communicating with the older generation and you send them emojis and they have no clue what you're saying. So this is very interesting how times have changed. Do you think, for you guys, this technological advance has affected how you communicate with older generation?
I think we'd all say 100%. Yeah.
And
how so?
Sure, we're all going to have somewhat of a similar answer, but I mean, social media and connecting through social media has really put us in a place where we kind of, lost touch with developing and establishing relationships. I mean, it is a way, it's not the way that has been done in the past. But I think the way we're establishing relationships from the get-go, I mean, there's dating apps now, there's friend apps, like, you can go online and literally look at an app and swipe left or right if that person is like a good friend or not to you. So, or good, somebody you want to take on a date or whatever. I mean, it's just the way we establish relationships is very different based off of that.
Well, how do you get to know someone when you're just online? Because you can't really get to know that other person on the other end of the smartphone, what they're really made of, what they're really thinking. How do you bypass? How do you, bridge that gap?
I think it's important to, once social media has made its impact on what you guys are, or how you've established a relationship, or how you guys are friends, I think it's important to, dive deeper into that relationship, whether it's like, hey, let's meet in person, let's go out to coffee, let's talk about, some ideas that we have. Like, I think it is important to have that, that person-to-person connection.
Well, I feel like you don't truly get to know the person you're speaking to on social media until you start having those coffee dates or whatever you're going to do in person. And if you don't, I'd say that after a lot of conversations online, maybe you start to get to know somewhat of what they like and what they don't like. And even then, there's still problems with that aspect of only communicating online. You'll see people pretend that they're somebody else, or you'll see that not just pretend, like a guy could be pretending he's a younger guy to get with another girl. And it's not even just that, maybe they're, lying about what they like or what they don't like. I mean, I guess you'll really get to know when time goes on,
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because we did a podcast on human trafficking, last month, and one of the things that we found out is you get a 45-year-old male pretending to be a 12-year-old girl to seduce, a young female and then kidnap the female. So social media, with that technology, people can hide behind a smartphone and pretend to be someone else. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to hear more about, from you guys. It's not, just friendship. People you think, back in our days, we are pen pals, but now you have this social media now where you meet people online, you want to be friends with them, but you don't really know who you're talking to. And so how do you meet people? How do you be friends with people? How do you meet, friends online, or you meet friends at work? Where do you meet your friends?
I think that I'm in the business of relationship building, right? Whether it's in person or online, I think it's an art form. To some, if you're extroverted, meeting in person, it's a no-brainer. It's easy for you to do. You can talk to anyone at any place. If you're more introverted, you might feel more comfortable talking to someone online because you're not looking at them face to face, right? You have a delayed time and reaction because, hey, I can think of what I'm going to say now, versus an immediate, we're going back and forth in this conversation. Now, there's the huge advantages and the disadvantages of that. So the advantages is you can play to any audience. For my age group, I have to know how to approach other generations when I'm sending them a text message, because they may not perceive the way I text my friend or my spouse the same way they perceive it. So if I send my wife just a K in agreement, she's going to think of it completely different than my mother would, right? K just means okay. To my spouse, no, but we're in an argument. Right? There's different ways of communicating, but you need to critique and know who your audience is and play to that. But I think it'd be beneficial each way, because with, social media and everything, you can reach different areas of the world, different groups, different ethnicities, whatever you're trying to do, you can outreach to those people where, if we go back 30, 40 years ago, you were only subject to the people who were in your area, right? If you had one local, millionaire, that was the guy you wanted to be a mentor or get influence from, or, if you talk to your friend on, hey man, how do I talk to these girls here, locally in the school, versus, hey, now great, I have dating sites, friend sites, I can expand my breadth here and try different things that work out, versus them just doing it locally.
Doctor, I will say 90% of my relationships, and I would say probably 90% of everybody in this room's relationships, we don't, they're not founded on our relationship on social media. We didn't meet that. I didn't meet somebody on Facebook and hit them up and think hey, we should go grab a drink or whatever. It's all of the relationships have started, or the good relationships, I guess, with your relationship usually start as, in person, you're in a class together, somebody, maybe you meet at the gym when you're working out, or whether it is, some way or the other. Then maybe it is built somewhat over online, you're back and forth when you're maybe sending them Snapchats of doing something that you guys both like to do. If I'm with say if I'm going snowboarding and I just met somebody on the mountain and I'm like, hey, I'm out and snow looks great today, something like that. But usually the relationships are founded we're not, I know the Gen Z conception is everything we do is online, but I would rather, I don't want to meet somebody online and try to build a connection. I would rather meet somebody in person and build a connection with them in person.
Maybe even online, think of it like a cheat sheet. If I go to what's Instagram or Facebook, and now know about your hobbies, what your interests are, where you like to travel, and I can use that to kind of open up a conversation.
To add to that, what Stothy was saying, I would have to agree. 90% of at least my relationships are built and made organically. The 10% I have online were more so professional transactions. Let's say I had the job done for me on Fiverr and he just so happened to be in the area and it was easy to meet up for coffee so we can go over the design I needed. So sure, more relationships are found online, but I wouldn't say it's an increasing amount where it's, to an extent, a tool to meet people. It can be, but not as much as people think it is. And to that point, I still think there are, going back to what I was mentioning earlier, because my generation particularly was so sheltered, there is a lot of hesitation to meet, your online friends in person, because you really don't know who's hiding behind that phone or that screen. And now, take for example, the new iOS update. I can change the text message I sent. So if I reread it, decide to change it, I could edit. It'll let you know I edited, but you don't know what I edited. There's things where you mentioned pen pals. Once that letter was sent, it was sent. You couldn't go hunt it down in the postal system, scratch off and, make your edits. But you can do that now because of technology. So I think the way we've communicated has changed. I think it has changed the way we meet people but not necessarily why we meet people. And the reason I say that is because, take, for example, going out to bars nowadays. A lot of more people are focused on their own group. They're not going out to meet people. People don't like to meet people anymore. I've noticed that a lot. You know, when I go to bars, I go with my friends, I drink with my friends, I talk with my friends, I dance with my friends, and I leave with my friends. I don't really go out and meet new people. That's not as common anymore. And you can see that in local social groups, like, for example, your local running clubs. Not many people are showing up to these running events anymore. It's hard to get people in the door for things like philanthropy events. It's hard to get people in the door even at your local nightclubs. You know, the nightclub industry is experiencing, you know, a huge, you know, downfall on people showing up on a day-to-day. Maybe it's because everything's more expensive, who knows? But people aren't socializing as much as they used to anymore, and they're sticking to what's comfortable to them and what they know.
You think it has to do with the fact that Gen Z have lost that sense of communication? Because if you look in a dining room setting where the parents and the kids are there, everyone has a smartphone. Everyone's doing this compared to, you know, generations ago where you can have your phone at the dinner table. You have that conversation. How was your day? What did you do today? And people tend to talk. This is, you know, you want to say 2 sentences, you can say with just 2 clicks. And so there's that emotional connection from having a conversation is lost. So people are not used to talking to strangers anymore because they just don't know how. They don't feel comfortable talking to strangers. And so do you think that might be part of the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, going back to what I was saying, the way we communicate online is also changing the way we communicate, you know, as a whole. The way I view technology, social media, and the internet, it's of this digital, not tangible or physical place that we exist in on a day-to-day. We do transactions on there. We meet people on there. We may not meet up with them physically, but we, you know, communicate with other people, and, you know, we can alter that sense of communication. Whereas to at a dinner table, what's said is said, and it was heard. You know, I feel like we have forgotten how to make relationships and how to keep communications physically, because over the phone, I could take 5 minutes. I could ghost you and never talk to you again. I could, you know, respond to you 3 days later and think about what I'm going to say. And yeah, there are pros and cons to that, but you can't do that at a dinner table. If I'm having a conversation with you and you're staring at me for 3 days, that's weird, you know? That's just simply not happening. It's as if people forgot how to respond and actually think and process information quickly and efficiently to have these certain conversations, whether it's socially or professionally.
I think we're a little bit to blame for that. I mean, that's in everybody's case. So even my generation currently raising children, even the ones before that, any kid you see now at the age of 3 has an iPad, right? So it's an easier way out to have your child occupied with something, and then you're brought up now with this screen you have directly in front of you, whether you're watching a video, a show, playing a game, and now you're incorporating that to the home. So now, yes, you have your kid at the restaurant with headphones on, you're sitting at a dinner table, there's no conversation being had, and there's a lost skill. Where now, if you go back to my generation in the 90s, great, we didn't have that. All you had was the TV that was there in the kitchen, that was a 27-inch. But I think it's how you are raised and brought up in that aspect, and you can incorporate that into your child's life or not. You have a decision to do that as a parent. Now, whether your child now has the self-discipline to know when to put it down or put it away, that's on them, but also you to guide them as a parent. Like, for my personal life, I take social media breaks. There'll be 1 or 2 months at a time where I delete all my apps, I put my phone away. I want 100%, you know, there, because there are times where I'll catch myself like, why have I been scrolling my phone for the last 2 hours? That there's just meaningless information that I'm getting. I'm not benefiting myself whatsoever. All right, and then I can call sleep deprivation and all the other stuff that comes along with, you know, staring at the screen for so long. But we don't have to go into that. But I think it's how we bring it into the homes and teach our young children from when they're younger to older. Hey, when can we put time aside to really put this down and focus on the people in front of you and have conversations, rather than taking the easy way out and saying, okay, well, I got this babysitter, we'll watch the kid for 6 hours.
Yeah, to add to those, you know, your point of social media breaks, my social media breaks growing up were, okay, Nick, get off the Xbox, it's time for dinner. You know, get off the Xbox, it's time for bed. You know, I heard a lot of that from my mother growing up. But a lot of these parents, they're giving them the iPad, and the second you take it away, you get a lot of tantrums. You get screaming, you get crying, you get fits, and when this happens, the parents, I would assume they feel a sense of embarrassment if it happens in a public setting, so you just quickly give it back to shut the situation down. So it's this constant, if I act out, I get rewarded, I get what I want. And that's what social media is. The longer you're on it, the longer the algorithm will show you what you want to see. So you find yourself in this cycle of, it's 10, it's bedtime, but let me just go on social media, check in real quick, and find yourself scrolling for the past 2 hours. You're like, oh, 1 o'clock.
You do when you get up. You're like, all right, let me check my phone real quick.
Yeah, so
It's interesting that we don't use the word addiction when it comes to social media. I always said that as a human being, we're predisposed to addiction, some addiction. If your addiction is good for you, you don't call it an addiction. Before you do all this, read a book. Nobody will say you're addicted. Before you do is drink alcohol every 5 minutes, they will say you're addicted to alcohol because alcohol is bad for you, right? So I think we have to understand that. So when we are on our phone 16 hours a day on social media, that's not addiction. And whether we like it or not, it's not addiction. And I think we need to start addressing that and fix that problem. I just wanted to make that comment real quick. Now, going back to ghosting, you mentioned the word ghosting. I know you guys are, Gen Z, Millennial, and all that, but there are older generation listening and watching. Can you explain what ghosting means so they can understand it?
Well, I mean, I guess it's like just when somebody I guess they text you and you just leave them on red, or you never answer them.
another jargon read. Ghosting. The act of vanishing, disappearing from digital existence and never being communicated again with another individual. Oh yeah.
Not responding. Just not responding. Is that
Just like-
what goes? If you're texting me and I don't answer you, then it could be an accident, or you text me again and I don't answer you again. It's probably because I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So that's me.
You'd be like, hey, can you hang out? And then on my end, I don't say anything ever. I guess you don't ever re-communicate.
Does that the person on the other hand, did they get upset?
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
Was the intent to shut them out?
Your intentions are to not speak to that person. So I mean, it depends on the situation. I mean, if we're me and Nico are good friends, and I'm a real estate agent. I represent Nico, and he's one of my clients. And if he's texting me about something that he wants to do with the real estate industry, and I ghost him, I don't think he's going to be very happy, right? So it's but if I worked with Nico a few times and he was, maybe morally incorrect or, doing things that I didn't want to associate myself, I might ghost him, right? Not that he ever would, but my boy. But, you know what I'm saying? It depends on the context. It depends on the situation.
I think with ghosting, it's the digital equivalent of sitting across the table from someone and then just getting up mid-conversation and walking away, and you're just there that's weird.
It also depends on the context. I feel like there are moments where you ghost and you don't even know that you ghosted. Let's say, in my case, let's say a couple months ago, somebody that knew me when I was 12, or I don't know, maybe 15, an old friend. Hey, I saw you were in the area, let's hang out. And then we planned to hang out, right? But then neither of us ever said anything and we never spoke again. So I guess on both parts, but there's no offense to it. You just kind of
that's
different. It's not,
that's different. It's just
Play by scenario.
Yeah, no, I think it's different.
It's circumstantial.
I hope the older generations get that. All right.
I think it's also too it's not, you don't have to have a tough conversation. So let's say apply it to dating, right? Let's say I'm talking to somebody and then all of a sudden they ghost me, they don't reply back on any messages, and then I don't want to feel silly and just, send them 3 more texts. Fine, it's the easy way out of saying, hey, I'm not interested, let's just move on. You're easy like, hey, I don't have to text you back, to see you again.
I don't have to face that part of life where I'm where that feeling of letting someone down or being rude or being mean.
Right.
Hey, this is gonna work.
Which would be the mature and proper thing to do. Let's make that point across. That's why my generation, even some people, circumstantially speaking, of course, find offense to this act of ghosting. It's circumstantial. It's like I mentioned before. It's the digital equivalent of sitting across the table from someone and then just walking away. That's essentially what it is.
Okay. Now, we're going to stick with technology here. online dating. And in the older generations, you have arranged marriages. You have people going to church or mosque to meet people. You have families that arranging to match their couples to get them together. But with technology, like everything else, you have access to information instantly. How is your generation dealing with online dating? Anyone want to start with that?
Yeah, I think there's like people that are out there looking for dating. There's people out there looking to make friends, but I mean, I don't think everybody does it. But it's definitely super popular, and it's just kind of it's an easy and simple way to like kind of find the right person for you. Maybe at that time, right? You don't know if they're the right person, but it's like they have a whole bio that you can read and be like, okay, that's the person I want to like talk to or not. It's just I just think it's just a way, like an easy way to like open up that door for people. I'm not saying it's a good or it's a bad thing. I don't use it. I've never been on any of the dating apps like that. I've downloaded them, maybe used them for a day or two, but I don't use them. I never have. But I mean, some people out there might, and it might be, they might have married the person that they found on a social, like a dating app. It could be great. It could just be that one act of opening the door, downloading the app, and like reaching out to that person. So it could go both ways.
I agree with the point that where you say it makes it easier, but we're not reinventing the wheel. So, and that's, you don't know someone's intentions, right? Whether you're on the app or I'm meeting you at a bar or in person or on the street, the intentions were always the same. We're now just changing the way we do things. So to the point of now with the online dating apps, you have a lot more accessibility. You can swipe right, swipe left on someone and keep rolling versus, we go, a little bit farther back before we had any of that. You only have what's in your local area in a 5-10 mile radius, and that was it. Now I could have a phone. You could drop me off at a different country, and all of a sudden I can see what might be there. Versus, hey, let me talk to somebody in this area. Let me talk to someone in this area, and then kind of go around. So it gives you accessibility to a lot more people, but now your dating pool is a little bit skewed, right? You don't know everyone's intentions of what you're doing in that, whether you just want to be friends or what we're looking to do here. Now, to my own personal story, me and my wife pretty much kindled on Instagram. It was all started from a DM message, right?
Direct message.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Direct message. When someone sends you a message on Instagram, we shorten it down, DM, right? Some might call it sliding in the DMs. But no, so I mean, previous relationship that we had long time before, she just happened to comment on the picture I made. From there, we just started talking and messaging back and forth, and then went on a date. So it's however you want to take it to your advantage or however you're tied to a relationship, it all comes down to that person. But it doesn't make the transaction more complicated where I don't know what your intentions are from behind the screen versus, I can see you in person.
I feel like with online dating, a lot of people frown on it. And I used to be one of those people. How could you possibly find love on the internet? It's sad if you're finding love on the internet. And I don't agree with that anymore because I've come to understand and perceive the internet and technology as this place that we exist and we interact in. And when you break it down, it's by definition what it is. Yeah, sure, it's not like this physical place where you can sit on a chair, but you can communicate, you can interact, you can share ideas, you can transfer information, live your day-to-day on the internet nowadays. And finding things like love on the internet, it's interesting in the sense where it can be a little bit more complicated because you come across those people who are only on there not to find love or not to use the platform for what it's intended to do and to just seek a form of self-validation by how many swipes or how many matches they get and maybe never reach out to them. I've, have a lot of friends in college who would do that, particularly girls. And not as much, well, men too. I'm not going to say women more than men, but a lot of people were only on the apps for a sense of reassurance that they were physically attractive, or a reassurance that they were, craved and wanted and desired.
Interesting.
I feel like online dating is, to me, it's a little bit more of a complicated topic to like come down to a conclusion, because like there's meeting on Instagram. I know a couple people that met on Instagram. You know, I've never been on, like I've never used or met anyone through that I've dated online, you know? So I don't have like a specific experience on that, but I do feel that these dating apps have made everything super superficial now. So like back in your time, you would kind of want to
Maybe it sounds so old.
no, I didn't mean it that way. Back
In the dinosaur age.
no, back in those times, you know, you kind of wanted to court the woman, or you really wanted to get to know her before, because, you know, your intentions were marriage, or I'm not sure how your experience was, but, you know, that's kind of what, at least my belief is back in the times. But now, you know, since we're so used to, like, meeting online, I feel like everything has been, oh, do I find you attractive enough? And that if you do end up going out on dates with them, at least the experience that I've heard, it's just sex. Like, there's nothing really actual, like, getting to know you. Do I really want to date you? Because a lot of these times, like, at least my point of view, you know, if you get a guy that's on an online dating app and he goes out on a date with you, you know, I don't, like, what else is he gonna want with you? I don't know. I don't, like, have such a good, like, viewpoint on that. And not just that, like, what makes you think he's still not on that app? Because a lot of, and it's not just guys, it's girls too. Like, you're swiping right, you're trying to see if you find people attractive. Like, you're probably going on multiple dates, and then there's somebody that maybe wants to commit, but you're not committing, you know. You don't see a lot of people commit nowadays. So I'm not sure if that has to do with, like, the generation, or maybe just people's personalities. You know, that's just my viewpoint on that.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, like I said before, intentions, right?
Yeah.
You can be on the app to find love. You can be on the app to, you brought it up, go ahead, just try to sleep with someone.
Yeah.
But like I said, we're not reinventing the wheel, because before you added, you were still going out to wherever you used to hang out to do the same exact thing, whether you're trying to find love or on someone to hook up with. I think it's just how we do it is differently now. But I think it does change it to in-person conversations, where someone might be better talking to someone through an app rather than face-to-face. You know how to talk to another person, you know, you're trying to potentially date in person, then you're not going to have any success. So the app is kind of like the easier way out of, okay, I can think about my response, I can word things the way I want it, and then eventually work up to a date, which may not be successful, and then, you know, at that point, you ghost them.
That's about the ghosting. But I think you the key point you said multiple times, I think summarizes all this social media dating with the intention. If you have a nice car, like a Ferrari, you don't know how to drive it, what good is it to have a Ferrari? So if you have a great tool like the social media, if you don't use it appropriately, then it's no good. And I think if you have a bad intention and you give someone that access to social media, they're going to use it more for bad intentions. If you have good intention, you give them social media, they're going to have more better outcomes. You know, they can use it, you know, absolutely well. You have people that do using it for validation. And if they don't get that validation now, talk about mental health, now they're depressed. Now they have issues. And they are doing it for bad intention. And yes, you don't know if they are going with multiple people. So that's a big problem. So I think social media, I call it the social media illusion, because you don't know who's behind that smartphone. You know, people will post a picture of themselves as a couple, that, you know, perfect, you know, relationship, perfect home, but you don't really know what goes on in the real, you know, behind the scene. And when people see that, they feel like, oh, I want to be like them. Well, you don't really want to be like them because you don't know what's going on. I see a few people online. There's a couple in particular that I see online all the time. They always post this perfect picture online. It turns out their life wasn't that perfect.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know is one of the, you know, the guy committed suicide because he was owing like $1 million. And so what you see online is not what is always real. And so sometimes we get so fascinated with that and we want to chase that. We want to be that. And I think, you know, you guys have mentioned that before. I want to hear your thoughts about this social media illusion. How does that affect your generation? How do you sort out what's good and bad when you look at media contents?
I feel like that's an outcome social media has done. Like that's a consequence of what, just social media existing is, seeing perfect lives. And I don't really know anybody that posts the non-perfect parts, So, but what people don't realize is that, like nobody's life is perfect. Like everyone has something, or everyone has been through something, Yeah, they could be posting a picture with a Ferrari, but like, what have they done to get there? Like, you're not seeing all those difficulties, all the challenges that they had to overcome, or not everything's perfect. And I always tell my friends or anybody I'm speaking to is that it's really good not to assume, because I've heard cases of people, like, let's say their friend groups on Instagram or going on all these trips, or they're buying all these Louis Vuitton purses, and then they want to do the same, and they make really dumb decisions. Like they don't make good decisions because they want to compare their lives to theirs, and then they end up like bankrupt, like. So a lot of people really do make not so good decisions when they're trying to compare their lives to other people's lives. So, my motto is to like, just don't assume, like, okay, good. When I see a picture and I see somebody doing well, I'm like, good for them, But everyone's path is different, and everyone has such a different path. So, in my case, I just see everyone else's lives. I'm like, great, but then I try not to compare, I mean, you'll find yourselves on occasions, obviously it's natural, but like never act on that comparison. And just, be happy for people or not, I guess that's a decision for everybody, but like, try not to compare, not to make dumb decisions. It's really, I guess it's like self-control,
Be a person. Find out like who it is you are, what it is you like, what do you want to spend your time doing? Like, don't use, hiding behind social media or the illusion of others. It can be affecting, it can affect you, but be human. I think that it's important to like, always remember, like, to try to be yourself at your core, no matter what. Like, you have to, find out what you really want, find out what you really like, find out your style of clothing, your style of what kind of car you want, whatever it is. So, like, find out you before you, like, try and get caught up in, like, getting inspiration from other people. I mean, inspiration is cool and all, but like, it is good. It's good to get inspiration from social media, but don't, like, don't even allow the illusion of somebody else doing good. Don't even let that be in your race. Stay on your seat, in your lane. Run your race.
You mentioned it's natural, to sometimes compare yourself to others, and I wanted to point that out in particular because in the past, there were times where you had situations where people would say they go to Miami, they rent the Ferrari, they get the most expensive hotel room, at the hotel, and they're going to these clubs, they're getting bottle service, and then they go back to their hometown, to an average home, an average life, an average car, because they just saved up a lot of money. So in theory, this misperception of the way people portray themselves has always existed, whether we like to believe it or not. It's not a new problem. It's always been a problem. People like to appear more than what they really are because they always want people to think they're doing better than how they're actually doing, because no one wants to be weak. The issue is we're always on social media. So that's what we're constantly seeing. But it's not a new issue. It's always been an issue. Like my sister mentioned, it's natural. It's natural to compare yourself to others. It's natural to want to be perceived as better, as this, image of perfection. I don't think it's a new problem. It's something we've always had.
Great point. Social media it's a stage. It's the show, right? How can I portray to you that I'm doing X, Y, and Z? And I know we were talking a little less about this off stage, but it comes tied back to mental health and addiction, right? You're comparing yourself to others in a way of like, it depends if you need it for motivation or how can I keep up. You want to be perceived as this person that you're not. I mean, we're not going to name individuals, but I know some people who have gone on a trip months before, saved videos, and then posted them months later, like they're still there.
Yeah, no, do that.
It's a thing.
It is.
Yeah, so it's a perception of like, oh, I'm doing so well, I'm still traveling, I'm doing this, or I just took a picture in a Ferrari because I rented it in Miami for the weekend. It's a stage. And coming back to Sophie's point of like, it's how good are you mentally with yourself? Are you happy? And, you could tell with your life to the point where you don't have to compare yourself to others, or it's constant rat race of, all right, well, he's doing this, I need to figure out how to do this, instead of finding out what's good for you.
I know.
That's the
In-depth conversation. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but that's the issue. Like, like what you were saying, like, are you happy? Most people aren't happy nowadays, and they don't even realize it. Which, off stage, I was mentioning, like, it's really important to be self-aware and really learn about how your brain works, because, that's another issue social media has created, is that I feel like Gen Z, and even, I don't know, like, what the new generation is called. Yeah, well, the younger ones than us. I feel like they don't even know what they want anymore. Like, you're like, oh, well, try to find your own style, try to find your own way of doing things or what you like. But most of these people don't even know what they like. Like, I could put a whole crowd of Gen Z, a little bit younger than us, or even the younger generation, and I bet you there's not even going to be one of them that really has their own sense of self, because they're so used to following trends. What's trendy, even fast fashion has become so popular nowadays because, everyone wants to fit in. So nobody has really their own sense of selves. And, that's not just for the younger generations. I also feel like that could even be going towards the older generations too. The difference is that, they grew up, they found who they were, and now, they're molding it according to trends. But trends have been, affecting people's lives a lot. Like, people really don't know what they like. People don't even know what they want to eat. Like,
The generation lacks decisiveness. That's a great point.
They don't even know what they want to do with their lives. That's why this whole workforce thing is, issue is happening. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know.
I think a lot of that comes from this sense of, our society fosters this sense of exploration without experimentation. And what I mean by that is, take for example, when growing up, I played basketball, and I was always taller than everybody else. So the coach sat me down and said, you're 6 feet tall in the 6th grade. You're 20 pounds heavier than everybody else on our team and the other teams. You're a center. You're a big man. You're grabbing the rebounds. You're pushing people out the way, and you're scoring points. That's your role. That's what you're good at. It was nowadays, we have coaches that, are pretty, a little bit more soft when it comes to that kind of stuff because of this political correctness. And you have players, or even, translates to life, of course, where, oh, I want to be a guard even though I am 6 feet tall, because that's what's cool. I feel like I deserve that because I feel like I could be good at that. Without experimenting what they could actually be more beneficial for this, group, or even yourself. It's that sense of exploring things without actually experimenting, and just based off of feelings as opposed to, real facts. So it comes down to, just that. We're not taking the training wheels off anymore. We're not sitting people down and saying, no, I have more experience than you. I think this, at least give it a try,
Yeah, I think the one thing that I hear run over my head is, with technology, we're now preparing folks for the advancement in technology. I say this over and over again about other topics. To get a driver license, you have to take a written test. You have to take a actual driving test, and if you pass those two, then here's your driver's license and go drive. Well, you've got all this social media, all this advancement in technology, you're not teaching people how to sort through that information. And so they're just winging it. And like you said, there's no direction. They don't know how to use these tools. And they get into the situation where they're depressed. And mental health issue that's already been obvious to this generation become more expanded, or almost like exponential growth. Because, my God, this is a wellness, we're hosting this event at the wellness center. People come in and say, can you just do this to my face so I can look like Kim Kardashian? I can look like this person. Well, your face is not like our face. You can't have that. But in their mind, what you see on the screen is they want to be that person. No, be you. Be a better version of you. And I think that's a big problem. So I know we're running almost out of time, but I'm going to say a few things in closing because I think it's very important. We're not trying to generalize everybody within this generation or any other generation because we're all different. Even on this panel, you're all different. But what I must say is that each individual is unique. Each individual is unique. And no one is like you. No one is ever going to be like you. Even when you look on that social media. So embrace your uniqueness. Improve upon that uniqueness. Be a better version of yourself. You can get inspired by somebody on the screen, but think about that, basketball professional player who's making millions of dollars. You see him on TV, you see him holding that championship ring. You know how many hours he spent training, exercising, keeping in shape so he doesn't get injured. People don't see that behind the scene. They just see that final product. Or that individual is pretending to be somebody. So if that person becomes successful as a basketball player, I say to you, find out what they did. Find out the hard work they did consistently to be successful, rather than trying to be another LeBron James. They went to the gym 5 times a week. They spend 3 hours. That's what you need to do so you can be a better person of yourself. So on that note, thank you all for joining me today. Be yourself, be unique, and be the best version of yourself. Until next time.